Greetings, friends. You are on the Ruslan Bailov channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of October 6, 2025. At the moment, positional fighting continues in the South Donetsk direction. There are small changes on the Pokrovsk front. As for the Konstantinovka direction, things remain quiet there for now. Fighting continues along the entire line of contact. There are also major developments on the Siversk and Krasny Lyman directions. Regarding the Kupiansk area, it is also quiet for now, just like on the Konstantinovka line. However, fighting continues in the center of Kupiansk, and on the Kharkiv front, the Russian armed forces keep advancing deeper into Volchansk. Battles also continue in the Sumy direction near Yunakivka and Kondrativka. As always, we will move from south to north. But before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss new videos, and always stay up to date on the latest events and news. During the past 24 hours, there has been new Russian progress in the area of the Uspanovka and Poltavka fortified districts. This is how the map looked just yesterday, on October 5, 2025. Today, Russian units have reduced the distance to the Poltavka and Uspanovka fortified zones to an absolute minimum. This information is confirmed both by neutral cartographic services and by pro-Ukrainian mappers. According to these sources and experts, the distance from the forward Russian positions to the forward Ukrainian positions near the Poltavka fortified district is now about 200 meters. That means that in the near future, the Russian army may attempt to enter the area of farms and barracks located in the eastern part of the Poltavka fortified zone to establish a foothold there and possibly develop a plan for further movement across the Ukrainian side of the river, called Yanchul, toward the settlements of Poltavka and Okhotnichye. A similar situation is taking place east of the Uspanovka fortified zone. There is also information about Russian forces advancing along the forest belts toward the main part of the stronghold. The distance in this case is slightly over 300 meters. So very soon, fighting may begin around the farms and barracks located east of Uspanovka. At the same time, the Ukrainian side is gradually pulling reinforcements and reserves to the western outskirts of its strongholds and fortified districts. The Russian Federation is tracking the concentration of Ukrainian units and possible temporary deployment points, striking them regularly with aerial bombs, FABs, as well as tube and rocket artillery. In other words, the assault phase has begun. For now, the pace of the offensive is low, because both sides, Ukraine and Russia, still have sufficient strength and resources to resist each other on this sector. But sooner or later, a turning point in this battle will come. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian side has begun to increase the intensity of counterstrikes in the zone of responsibility of the 29th and 36th Armies of the Russian Armed Forces. The strikes come from the direction of the Volchya River, from the settlements of Velikomikhailovka and Pokrovskaya, toward the settlements of Stepovaya, Verbovaya and Berezovaya, and so on. More and more often, footage of objective control appears, showing how the Ukrainian side transfers equipment and personnel to this section of the front to organize counterattacks. However, all roads and highways are under the control of Russian FPV drone operators. As soon as Ukrainian vehicles approach the front line, they are immediately destroyed. In addition, the main strongpoints and forest belts through which Ukrainian units attempt to move are regularly hit with aerial bombs. So now a heavy meeting engagement is underway here. The Russian side, by all appearances, is holding a firm defensive position. The goal of the Russian units is clear: to draw the attention of Ukrainian reserves that have arrived to stabilize the situation, while the Fifth Army continues its offensive toward Poltavka and Uspanovka. Next, we move to the Pokrovsk sector of the front, from where a lot of important news is also coming in. Let me remind you that since October 2, 2025, reports have been coming that the Russian army broke through the Ukrainian defense lines in the western, southern, and southeastern parts of the city of Pokrovsk. Starting from October 2nd and 3rd, we have been adjusting the map daily, adding more and more grey zones. Today, new information indicates that the Russian army has almost completely cleared the Lazurny, Shakhtarsky, and Solnechny micro-districts located in the southeastern part of Pokrovsk. This information comes mainly from reliable pro-Russian experts. At the moment, no videos have yet appeared that could confirm this data. Let me remind you that just yesterday, this video was published showing Russian artillerymen striking a building in the area of the Shakhtarsky micro-district. Reportedly, Ukrainian soldiers were inside that building. After the strikes, we can see 3 Ukrainian soldiers retreating northward toward the railway line. Yesterday, the report suggested that the Ukrainian army began gradually withdrawing its units from this part of Pokrovsk to the north. Today, as you can see, this entire micro-district is being marked on the map as a grey zone. Perhaps very soon, the first geolocated videos and visual evidence will appear confirming control over the southeastern section of the city. As we mentioned earlier, a turning point seems to be approaching, or has already arrived, in the battle for the entire Pokrovsk agglomeration, not only within Pokrovsk itself, but also in neighboring cities such as Mirnograd and others. The decisive moment, apparently, is now developing or has already occurred in the southeastern part of the Pokrovsk agglomeration, precisely at the breakthrough point. Today, a large number of reports are coming from this area, stating that Russian units have managed to fully recapture the settlement of Novotoretskaya and secure their positions there. There is also information that the Russian army has regained control over a strongpoint near the settlement of Pankovka. We are talking about this network of trenches and dugouts. Russian forces have also taken control of the settlement of Zapovednoye, or Nikonorovka, if we refer to its old name. In addition, Russian units are improving their positions in the area of Novoshakovo and Volnoye. Apparently, a new assault on the settlement of Novoshakovo will begin again very soon. Over the past few days, reports have also been coming in that Russian troops have increased the intensity of their attacks toward the road between the settlements of Sofivka and Novopavlovka. Some sources and cartographers have already marked this area as a grey zone. Let me remind you that this Sofievka-Novopavlovka road is the last more or less usable route that the armed forces of Ukraine have been using to supply the entire grouping and garrison of their units inside what is called the Shakhovsky pocket. If the information about the physical control of this road is confirmed, it will mark the beginning of the collapse of the Ukrainian defense across the entire Shakhovsky pocket, essentially the beginning of the downfall of Ukraine's entire Donbass defensive operation. After the clearing of the Shakhovsky pocket, the Russian army will likely continue advancing both toward Dobropoli and Druzhkovka, as well as north toward the settlements of Slavyansk and Kramatorsk. Again, according to both pro-Russian and neutral cartographers and analysts, a turning point, or at least a decisive moment, has either already taken place or is now unfolding across the entire Pokrovsk direction. Next, we move toward Kramatorsk, Slavyansk and Siversk. Today, very interesting footage is being published from Kramatorsk, a city that so far has not yet been directly affected by active combat. In this footage, we can see the flight of a Russian drone equipped with fiber optic control technology. Pay attention to the very high-quality image, an excellent picture. We can see that Kramatorsk looks like a lively city, giving the impression of some place deep in central Ukraine, untouched by war. During the drone's flight, a military vehicle belonging to a Ukrainian soldier was detected. It was immediately struck by a Russian FPV drone. This shows that the Russian side is gradually establishing fire control over the main supply artery leading to Kramatorsk. From this city, supplies are delivered to Slavyansk, Druzhkovka, Konstantinovka, and the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Apparently, we will be seeing more and more footage of objective control from this area in the near future. Now we move on to the settlement of Siversk, where the Russian army continues to advance from both the south and the north. Let me remind you that during the second half of September and the beginning of October, the Russian army managed to completely clear the settlement of Fyodorovka. Footage of objective control published on October 4th shows Russian soldiers raising the Russian tricolor flag in different parts of the settlement, confirming full control over the area. A few weeks earlier, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation had already confirmed the clearing of the settlement of Kuzminovka. Yesterday, the Russian Ministry of Defense again confirmed control over Kuzminovka. We can see that the southern defensive line of Siversk is collapsing like a house of cards. Now, apparently, the Russian army will attempt to clear the network of strongpoints located on the heights north of the Fyodorovka crossing and east and west of Kuzminovka. After clearing these areas, it is likely that we will see a flanking strike towards Sviato-Pokrovskaya and Ray-Alexandrovka, specifically along the Ray-Alexandrovka-Sviato-Pokrovskaya road. If Russian units succeed in advancing along this route, the settlement of Siversk will effectively be encircled, trapped in a full cauldron. Russian units are also actively striking the main bridges and crossings inside the city of Siversk. Today, this footage was published showing a strike on a river crossing with the use of a Russian Kh-38 missile. This bridge is located along the Bakhmutka River. We can see that systematic work is being done to disrupt logistics, and step by step, the city of Siversk is being taken into pincers. Meanwhile, Russian forces are increasing the pace of their offensive on the Lyman sector. Fighting continues in the area of Yampol. Russian troops have now established dense and full fire control over all supply routes. In this footage, we can see Ukrainian troops attempting to evacuate from the area of Zakotne using a quad bike. But the quad bike was struck by a Russian drone. A bit farther north, fighting continues for the settlements of Drobyshevo, Novosiolovka, and Yarovaya. Today, reports indicate that Russian troops are attempting to secure positions inside the Drobyshevo forest, a small wooded area located within the urban limits of that settlement, and are gradually advancing toward the central part of the village from this direction. On the northern axis, the main news comes from the settlement of Otradnoye. Today, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation announced that the village has come under full control of the Russian armed forces. These new objective control videos were also published today, showing Russian soldiers raising the Russian tricolor flag in the central part of the settlement. Based on this footage, no map adjustments are required, as Drobyshevo had already been marked under Russian control some time ago based on earlier verified videos, but it appears that the final clearing of the area was only completed today. Next, we move to Volchansk. Today, information is coming in that Russian forces are accelerating their offensive in an effort to reach the Rubezhnoye highway, to split the Ukrainian defensive line in this sector into two parts and effectively cut off the central and eastern parts of Volchansk from the main territory, to later focus on storming that isolated part of the city. In the coming days, we also expect a large number of updates from this area. Cruise missile deliveries of the Tomahawk type to Ukraine are rapidly becoming a central issue in Russian-American relations. The Trump administration has suspended this question for the moment, stating that the transfer of such weapons to the Ukrainian armed forces is possible, but that no final decision has yet been made. Moscow's initial response was standard. The Russian side declared that the appearance of Tomahawk missiles in Kiev's arsenal would not fundamentally change the situation on the front line. However, following Vladimir Putin's remarks at the Valdai Forum, a second sharper reaction appeared. The delivery of these missiles would destroy the positive trends in relations between Russia and the United States. Here, clarification is needed. By positive trends, Moscow means the very fact that a dialogue between Moscow and Washington began this February in Riyadh, culminating in the high-level summit in Anchorage. Whether one considers that a positive tendency or something else entirely is a matter of personal interpretation. But that is not the main point. The essence is that the United States is, in the current conflict in Ukraine, a direct participant, a warring side acting in a proxy format against Russia. Without American weapons, and to a lesser extent European ones, and without American intelligence support, the current Ukrainian regime would have been completely defeated by the summer of 2022. In other words, what is happening in Ukraine is a war between the Russian Federation and the United States, fought indirectly only because both sides possess large nuclear arsenals. Ukraine in this context is merely the battlefield with ambitions, but nothing more. Under these circumstances, the very act of initiating dialogue with Washington, without it first ceasing its arms deliveries and intelligence support to Kiev, represents a major diplomatic concession on Moscow's part. If Moscow were also to tolerate the deployment of Tomahawks, that would amount to an act of political humiliation. Therefore, Russia's reaction is entirely logical. Should these missiles appear on the front, negotiations with the United States will be suspended. For now, however, the likelihood of such a step by the Trump administration appears below average. Most likely, the public mention of the Tomahawk issue is a means of exerting pressure on Moscow. Still, the periodically erratic political behavior of the current American president forces observers to consider every possible scenario. And that is all for today, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave your likes, and all the best to you.